Verdict: we, the jury in Miami-Dade County, Florida, find the defendant, Daisy Link, as to count 1, second-degree murder, guilty of second-degree murder.
So the Daisy Link trial is over. She has been found guilty, to the surprise of, well, I don't know who'll be surprised by the actual verdict, but I was pretty much surprised by how quick it churned over. I thought it would take quite a bit of time to actually reach this particular verdict because of just the substance of the testimonies that was given. I had the plan to go into this particular video with what was a prediction of what the verdict was going to be because of this idea that I had, and well, the verdicts came in fast, and now, well, here I am doing a workaround. Now, I know many may believe that the jury got this one particularly wrong, and the defense lawyer, Antonio Lomas, did such a wonderful job in the closings, much better than the prosecution.
You saw video of him running around. There's a video of him being told to leave a few hours before he was shot. How many times does this woman have to tell him to leave? You know, once is enough. Once is all it takes. It's my house. You need to leave. You need to leave. If you don't leave, you're committing a crime by not leaving. Okay?
And I agree with you. I agree with you 100% partially.
You're committing a crime. But he knew that she didn't want to call the police on him. He knew that for whatever reason, and you know, she shouldn't have, but for whatever reason, unfortunately, she had a soft spot for this man. And she kept giving him opportunity after opportunity, even though, as we all know, she probably shouldn't have. But again, relationships are complicated. To be in reasonable fear and justified to use deadly force if somebody is in the process of unlawfully and forcefully entering your home. That is exactly what he was doing. And unless they can prove to you beyond all reasonable doubt that that's not what he was doing, then your verdict is not guilty. Anything other than that would be a disgrace.
Because he did actually do a great job in those closings. Still, the jury had it bang on with this verdict. And on this video, rather than predicting what the outcome is going to be, because, I mean, come on, it's flipping over now. Rather, I'm going to show you reasons why the jury got this one completely correct. Hi, I go by the name of Hines, your friendly neighborhood ketchup man, and welcome to Ketchup Court, where we are on a mission to make trials digestible for you. As with all of my recaps, you can find full daily reports of the trial, highlighting the key testimony as well as giving the timeline of events based on the testimony provided. The links are in the description below. Like I said before, Antonio Lomas did a wonderful job for Daisy Link. He sort of reminds me of Doug Weinstein, who did such a good job in the Nicholas Casodes trial, despite the defendant in that case. Nonetheless, Antonio defended Daisy Link with all of his breath. He made a lot of great points in that closing argument. He extracted every piece of value, emotional value, that he could have from all the witnesses that testified for him. In fact, there was some commenters in the Law and Crime trial chat where I was watching this who were saying, if this man cannot get him off, no one can. And I completely agree. He did a wonderful job with those closings. They were extremely persuasive. So what actually went wrong? Well, you ain't gonna like this, but he had one giant problem. Have you guessed it yet? No, take your time with this one. I'm sure it will come to you. Guessed it? Alex Bergida. But you said Antonio Lomas was much better. His closings was much better than the lead prosecutor, Alex Bergida. So how on earth is this guy the giant problem? And yes, I agree with you. The closings were better, but we cannot ignore the fact that he was out-strategized from the very beginning. Therefore, we must cast our minds back to the very opening statements of this particular case, because there was an interesting tactic that I noticed from the prosecution that they didn't even use. I mean, the tactic was very simple. We are not going to attack Daisy at all. And to be quite fair, this was bizarre because they were on the defensive from the beginning. This is what kind of stood out to me. They immediately admitted that Pedro was not a good man, that they had a toxic relationship, and they accepted this from the beginning. But the key takeaway from their opening statements was that Daisy's actions were not the actions of a remorseful person, and they had set their own case to point out and expand on the word actions, because that's all they showed. And in all fairness, it signaled a kind of a show and tell strategy when you look back at this case in hindsight, because Antonio must have saw this and thought, they didn't even call her a liar. And he knew what they were going to present as evidence, because of course they are not going to be trading notes on what their opening statements were going to be. But why is this a mistake? And I will show you as the video goes on, but first I must show you why the prosecution had to play defense from the onset. They knew Daisy was going to testify. They knew that this was coming because of the defense that she was pleading. They also knew that from her, the domestic violence testimonies were going to come in. Immediately with the first few witnesses, the officers left you questioning, wait, did Daisy actually lie to these police officers? Why would she actually do this? At least that was my takeaway from all of this. And then you had the neighbor come in and testify about the blood trail. You had the testimony about Pedro about to lose his life and he was stumbling over. You had all of that established from day one. Are you seeing the mistake yet? Then on day two, you had more evidence coming in about how the gun was found at the bush, but no bullet casings was found with the gun. And we did hear from both teams that it was Daisy that had shot Pedro. So this was not really a surprise to have heard about the gun being found. It was just interesting in the context of all of the evidence being presented so far that the gun will be ditched and thrown away. But this moment right here is where Antonio had to change his approach.
What was either of their reaction when you informed them what was going on?
So Crystal Barreto immediately spontaneously stated the words, "If he is dead, Daisy must have shot him."
Yes, it hit him in the head out of nowhere that Daisy's credibility at this point, his shot, and it wasn't even a direct shot at Daisy, but it was more coming through the witness that they are going to present later on. And boy, oh boy, what do you actually do when this happens? You knew that the evidence was lying there because you were employing the tactic of a botched investigation when you were asking the questions about the DVR and the fact that the footage is now lost.
Right, but you could see it, and then you could record it another way, right? Like
No.
a body-worn camera or with a phone, or just record something so you preserve it as evidence, right?
There was no evidence. I was not able to export the dates and times that they were asking.
Take out a phone, record it in any other way, and that way we have a recording of the evidence this evidence which pertains to a murder case. Isn't that a solution to the problem?
Are you asking about playback?
Yes.
Like to actually play the video?
Yes, ma'am.
My job is not to play back the video. My job was to respond and export the video.
So all those other options that I just explained to you, none of that was done, correct?
No.
And at some point, the DVR was returned to the owner, correct?
Yes.
As you sit here, you are not able to tell us how it was that a month's worth of footage was lost while it was in police custody. You're not able to tell us how that happened?
No, sir.
Thank you.
And you also can't dispute the medical evidence of where Pedro was actually shot that you know is coming later on.
And how did the bullet first enter the body?
So he has he has an entrance wound on the left foot. That's coming out the back of the left heel region.
How on earth do you contain this? Therefore, his next move was crucial. And this is where we saw the most interesting change in his strategy, and that was with the cross-examination of Melanie Guinoris, because he started to now go on with Pedro loitering around rather than the idea that he wanted to be shot. And well, he did squish that idea together but this was the first time that we heard that Pedro was loitering around. The reason why I'm highlighting this moment is because we had Robert Cisneros from day one, and this is why I believe he did not strategize for this, because He knew from day one that this was the neighbor. There was no questions asked of Cisneros on day 1 and day 2 when he came back to the stand of, okay, have you ever had noise disturbances in the older years that you've been living in? Have you ever had these two couples fighting with one another? These questions would have been pertinent. Like, have you seen commotions from Pedro always loitering around and always causing an issue, etc.? Lay the seeds from the onset, but he didn't do this with the only neighbor that had the DVR that lives close to these people. And even with this cross-examination and what he was highlighting, the prosecution still didn't call Daisy a liar or anything like that. They were just going through, had she done this, as she confessed to you at this time, etc. Do you see the mistake yet? And they had the lead detective, Joseph Cruz, come in on day 4, I believe, to establish the timeline, or at least the times of the shooting, which was from 3:12 a.m., which was when the shooting occurred, 3:23 a.m., which was when the 911 call was placed, and 3:27 a.m., which was when the first officer arrived. Then we had testimony of around 6 a.m. where Danny Morales had arrived onto the scene. So therefore, he would have interacted with the family that arrived at 8 a.m. after all the commotion. So now we have to jump ahead to that closing argument where he primarily focused on saying that Daisy only lied to the police.
Was Daisy honest with the police from the get-go? No, she wasn't. Okay? No, she wasn't. Should she have been? Probably. But can someone really understand what's going through somebody's mind when they're in that position? Daisy had a fear, a reasonable fear, that if the court found out that she was allowing Pedro to see those kids in person, knowing that he's still being violent, knowing that he's still abusing drugs, a court could very easily and theoretically say, you know what, you're not supposed to have him around those kids. You know what he's doing. We're going to take those kids away from you. As a parent, is there anything scarier? Anything scarier than losing your kids? I'd rather be killed than lose my kids, personally. She feels the same way. That's why she did what she did.
Are you seeing the mistake yet? So if you're caught a mistake by now, just highlight this particular timestamp before I go on to reveal what the mistake was, so that I know that you are a true tastemaker. So if your closing argument is about Pedro losing his parental rights, also being deported, which is why Daisy had to protect him, well then why not say that from the beginning? Take this thing that is going to come with, because you know that they are going to present officers who have spoken with Daisy. You have seen the transcripts of these conversations. You've seen the reports. They have it documented that Daisy had been saying this with the officers. So why would you not take this thing that is coming with that particular testimony away from the prosecution? Because now you look as guilty as her. You are only making this argument because you know it looks bad for Daisy to have shot him at the back of his leg, and you need a reason for why she is not of a depraved mind to have just let him wander, despite knowing she had shot him based on what she objectively said in the videos. You know that it's bad that Daisy not only lied to the police, but her sister Crystal is gonna come in and testify that she didn't say this statement to the police. So effectively, is she lying to us as well? If she is lying, what does that make of her testimony? Who says that they had this DV debacle? Like I said, this was a huge mistake from the onset, because he should have actually presented Daisy as a victim who was acting in the best interest of Pedro from the onset. Pedro did not deserve it, and Daisy still loved him enough to still try to help him and lied to the police so that he couldn't get deported. These are facts that you say Daisy had with her, that you know that Daisy is going to testify to. Why not work with that? I really think he believed that the domestic violence testimonies were going to be enough to explain what was happening in that scenario. And to be quite fair, he did regain control, which is what I pointed out earlier. He laid the seeds of the loitering, and though I agree with Broken Baker on the debrief stream that we done of this trial, the facts that...
But again, you have to, the castle doctrine doesn't start at your front door. It starts at your residence or your car. You can defend yourself outside. And I think the argument about how he was going to go in and he was going to close the door and how he was going to lock the kids, there was no evidence at any point in the case. I think that was a mistake bringing that up. But you could have argued him coming back on her property, that's enough to potentially give her the right to do something to him.
From the beginning, it was about Daisy's credibility, and he just did not see the play by the prosecution so that he can safeguard against this particular fact of her credibility going to be attacked later on. Alex Bergida, the lead prosecutor in this case, he knew that the victim was a bad one, but he had the facts on his side. It was reinforced by the medical evidence, and he had to make sure that there was zero distractions from this fact. And he played it clean, reserving the credibility attack for the closing and Daisy's cross-exam. And even at the cross-exam, he didn't even go full pelt. He only focused on the facts in front of him. He wasn't trying to explain the violence that was being baited by Daisy. He just reminded everyone of the facts, and then he went home with it. So yes, the defense had a much better closing. I agree with you there 100%, but they dropped the ball from the beginning by not presenting Daisy as a flawed human caught up in a complex situation such as domestic violence. If you're gonna end with such a strong closing where DV is complex, love is complex, these are great points to bring up. Establish it from the beginning that she did this for Pedro. Distract, because you know that they are going to present this earlier. Like, force the prosecution to really grind out this result, like really work hard for this result, knowing that the facts were on their side. But I'm not blind, I'm not Stevie Wonder, okay? I know that the defense didn't have much to work with. That's not my argument. But I mean, we have a massive what if theory now. What if she just said she lied to protect him? She lied to stop him from getting deported. All of those things. Fear of losing her kids. Why make it about Pedro the deceased? Why say that Pedro wanted to die? Just strategy, man. Let's be honest. Alex did not have the greatest cases on his docket either. I mean, yeah, he had the facts on his side, but let's admit, like, you are defending an abuser. Like, literally, that is the case. But we must admit that this was very powerful.
The last ones to speak is our burden. But we were very upfront with you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. This is a toxic relationship. Two people that should have never been together. Ms. Link said Pedro Jimenez was a good guy. I disagree. I don't think he was a good guy. But he didn't deserve to be murdered that day.
Anyways, what do you make of this case? Am I a bumbling idiot? Tell me exactly where I'm wrong in the comments, and also what your thoughts are of this case as well. Thank you ever so much for watching. I truly appreciate you taking the time out to watch this particular video. If you've made this far, you've got great taste. Sprinkle your DNA all over that like button if you found this video to be of value for you. Consider supporting the channel by becoming a tastemaker and be part of our great community here on YouTube by hitting that join button. Also, support us on Patreon as well, or by giving us one-off donations, whatever your heart contents. The links are in the description. If you have a taste for the law, you're already one of us. Make it official and become a tastemaker today. Also, the playlist of this particular trial should be coming up on your screen right now, and you can binge watch our coverage of this particular trial. I go by the name of Hines, your friendly neighborhood ketchup man, and this has been The Ketchup.